All right, I think that's pretty good for the lighting right now. Actually using two 5 of all 9 to just kind of get this effect at night, which so far seems good. Obviously, I'll have a little better of an idea once it gets on YouTube and we see what happens. But I thought I might indeed start number 3. Sorry, I'm going to unbutton a little bit. Don't ban me. um, so we had found the house. We'd gotten upstairs and had found the bathroom and the bedrooms and all that fun stuff. So, like I said, I took the bedroom right next to the stairs. Fawn took the big bedroom, and Pilfer and whoever it was with him took the back bedroom. We crashed out for the night. Now the next morning, Fawn comes into my room to split a cigarette with me for the morning. And then she was going to go downstairs and basically go into the backyard and go to the bathroom because there was no running water and no electricity in the house. It had again been a pretty strong indicator that the place was abandoned, empty, something going on. So Fawn goes tiptoeing down that mountain slide of magazines and comes running back up just as fast. Down there, somebody down there. There's somebody down there. What do you mean there's somebody down there? I didn't hear anybody at night. And I will say when you live outside, your ear changes. You hear things a little differently because there are certain sounds you look out for that you may not have before, or you at least get far more in tune with them. Well, I did do some stuff today. My hair's all kind of sweaty and punched up, but we don't care. Well, kind of care, but not at this point. So, yeah, she's like, there's somebody down there. There's somebody down there. Doors that were open are closed, and doors that were closed are open. She's like, there's somebody down there. Now, like I said, at this point, I had a mohawk and was starting the growth of a goatee. I also probably hadn't shaved for 4 or 5 days at least at that point. Had on a pair of blue jeans, some angry punk rock t-shirt or another, and combat boots. And I went kicking down those stairs as hard as I could, launching magazines against the wall as I went, figuring it was some little tweaker or weirdo or somebody that I could scare out of there if there was somebody in there. And hopefully scare the hell out of them so they didn't realize how scared I actually was, having to be the big guy to go down and see what was going on downstairs. So I'm almost to the landing of the stairs. And once you get to the landing, there's like 3 more stairs down. The front door to the sliding doors to the front room pop open. And there's a little old man. I mean, little old man. Couldn't have been more than like 5'6", 5'7", Coke bottle glasses, haircut straight out of 1950. Brown rayon nylon pants with suspenders and an old white button-up shirt come popping out of the front room with a baseball bat in his hands. Get out of my house! Get the hell out of my house! My worst fears come true. Somehow there is actually somebody living here. This is actually somebody's house. And I have just scared the living fucking hell out of him. So I put my hands up and say, I'm sorry. We're out of here. I'm sorry. And I proceed to go back up the stairs. And if anybody sense a pilfer in there, friend in the back hadn't figured it out by that point, it was time to pack your shit and go. So we all started packing, rolling up sleeping bags, making sure the couple of things actually taken out of the bag overnight, just not have them in the bag for once. All going back in there. Fawn comes back to my room. She's like, I don't want to leave. I want to stay here. I'm tired of weird hotels and sleeping on the streets and never knowing where I'm going to be the next night. I want to stay here. It's like, well, that's nice. What do you expect me to do about it? I'm like, I can't do anything about it. It's his house. She's like, can't you do anything about it? So I figured, what the hell? I went back down the stairs. He's still standing there, bat in hand, hand shaking. I walk down far more softly this time. And I get to the landing and I sit down and again. I just kind of put my hands up. I introduced myself. Told him I was homeless. Told him it was the first time that it ever happened to me. And some of the things I was dealing with. And the fact that I did not know what I was going to do if I left this place. I did not know where the next place was. And I was kind of tired of that too. And then I did ask him just why his home was as much of a disaster as it was. His name was Norman, and we'll learn more about Norman as time goes along. Norman's wife had died in that house 3 years previously. Norman had also been born in that house. Literally. And it was just a lot for him. And so he left. He worked at the library over in Berkeley at the college pretty much all his life. And so after his wife had died, he got a small apartment in Berkeley and had just been staying over there for a while. And that's when people first started breaking in. He would come along and kick people out every 3 days to a week and a half, come to his home, and if anybody was in there, roast them out. But cleaning up everything that was in the house was more than he could deal with. So he was just continuing to stay at his place in Berkeley this whole time. So I looked at him and said, okay, I'll make you a deal. Since I'm homeless, you let me stay here, and whoever else is willing in exchange for cleaning your house up. He looked at me long enough that I was actually about to get up and just go, okay, sorry for the idea, Asta. That's what he finally said. If you're crazy enough to clean all this up, you can stay. I've never heard a little punk rock girl squeal like a 13-year-old ever before, but that's pretty much what Fawn was sounding like at that little moment when Norman said we could stay if we cleaned. And so, of course, when I got back up the stairs after talking with Norman about a few more things about the ins and outs, stay out of his room type of thing, more or less, for starters, just stay out of his room. When I got back upstairs, Fawn gave me a big ol' happy hug. Pilfer and his friend left quite quickly, within like 5-10 minutes, when they realized it would be work that would be done to stay in the house. Now, as I said, Fawn actually had a friend, Shauna, already in the area. And she supplied us with like our first day's worth of trash bags of just trying to get some of the weird stuff downstairs up. And there were definitely days we went gangbusters. Like, you know, we just wanted stuff cleaned and wanted certain things looking nice. And after a few days, found this other little gutter punk kid, Crash, who, as he himself said, he's like, I ain't the smartest, but I can move stuff. And he was more than happy to help clean. So he took over the back bedroom. Now, in Fawn's room, in the closets, I should mention the closets had windows in them too. I hadn't bothered to mention that cute little point too. Each closet had a nice little individual, unique window in it, facing the street. There were all these boxes and boxes and boxes, back to front of these closets. It's all the room was in there for, was those boxes. So the next time I saw Norman, I asked him what those boxes were exactly. Because I had looked at a couple of them, and what I had seen so far was really old photo albums / scrapbooks. Because there were definitely photos of different things. There were headlines from like back when San Francisco went through a flood, the big fires San Francisco went through. And these went back, I mean, like 100 years, some of this stuff. And Norman was like, oh yeah, that's Mom and Grandma's and great-grandma's scrapbooks. You know how many times I was forced to sit down and look at those on a Saturday when everybody else was playing stickball? Like, they're stashed away for a reason. I was like, you don't want them? He was like, no, I don't want them. I said, could I investigate selling them in exchange for funds for cleaning and eating while here? And he thought I was crazy. He was like, you can find somebody to buy those, you go right ahead. Because by this time I had already been out exploring a little bit and had found this old bookstore. We were on the 22nd and Church area. I don't know if I've mentioned that before or not, but yeah, right around 22nd and Church. If you want to look up Google and see what I'm talking about. Train line goes right through there. You know, one of the city lines does. Muni, maybe? I don't know. It's been a long time. Don't shoot me if I'm wrong. But there was a bookstore there that had a lot of the old Matt Groening stuff from Life in Hell and all that, you know, framed and on the walls. You know, a lot of cool beat authors who I was not quite aware of yet. That was a couple years away yet. But he had a lot of good stuff. And I saw he had a lot of antique array from that, anything that had to do with any kind of print, newspapers, photographs. If it had to do with San Francisco, this guy seemed kind of interested. And there had been this one book I had pulled out that I thought was pretty interesting because it had some really impressive headlines from back in the day of San Francisco papers, like war and again a fire and an earthquake, and in with that also was a photo of a house that looked very familiar. But this house was on a rolling field of hay. Either side, nothing but hay. Behind it, nothing but hay. But it looked like the outside of this house. So I asked Norman. He's like, oh yeah, my great-granddad built this house for his wife for her wedding present. Turns out his great-grandfather was one of those kind of artisanal architects that was helping to put up all the kind of, I don't know if shotgun is what you want to call them, since I feel like they are kind of those longer houses. Maybe that's the wrong term. Maybe that's something we only use back in the Midwest type thing. But Yeah, with the beautiful scalloping and pillars and everything else along the front. This guy was one of the people that built those houses. So he took up a little piece of land where there was literally nothing yet and built his wife her dream home. That's why it has all those amazing pocket doors through the bottom floor. It has the huge built-in china hutch and buffet in the kitchen. And I would find out in short time an amazingly inlaid wood pattern throughout the entire downstairs floor. And it would repeat upstairs as well. At least 5, maybe 7 woods used to make this amazing, just beautiful pattern that went through the floor everywhere. So, cool old house. So I took that album and a couple others down to this guy that ran the bookstores. The bookstore, not bookstores. And I showed him the albums, and he's like, "Can you leave with these with me for a little bit, so I can actually look through them?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. I'm right up the road. I can come back, say what, a couple, 3 hours?" And he's like, "Yeah, that'd be good." And I came back. I realized this is 1990 money too. For one book, he offered me $75. That was the one with that photo. The other 2 books, he offered me $50 each and asked if I had more. And I said, "Oh, yeah." Because this was definitely back before TV, maybe some of it even before frickin' radio was everywhere. So that's all the women of his family had done throughout his, life, and even before him, was make these scrapbooks chronicling San Francisco's history. And their own as well. I mean, there were like little baby napkins and things like that too from certain events in there. And so this book guy and I, we got a deal rolling of where we would eventually hit, like, I think it was $20 or $25 a book, because some of them were great, some of them were boners, and to really truly go through for him and like, okay, I have to dissect every single one, and decide if it's worth something more or not. We just decided on $25 a book, which I was fine with. Norman was fine with. I knew it was going to be a lot of time for him to go through and find what was going to be good and what wasn't, so it was going to cost him money in that sense of time and investment as well. And it was a quick flip for me. So I started taking down a box like every 10 days, because there were usually about 10 or 11 of these books per box. So $250, thank you very much. Back to getting some food and cleaning supplies for the house. Now, we reached a point where the bottom floor was completely cleaned up except for Norman's room. I had still completely left that alone. I had discovered that gorgeous floor I was talking about. We had completely, by that point, cleared away the stairs, cleared away everything upstairs, gotten rid of the razors, gotten rid of the jugs and jugs and jugs of urine. That was not a fun day in the backyard, let me tell you. Sorry. I was 20. And we had reached a point of where I was starting to kind of fiddle with little things. I was starting to work on getting the keys that I had found around the place fitting and working into all the skeleton key locks that were in the house. And Fawn was like going through and doing deep clean, and she's a girl, she's going to do a better deep clean than me. It's just an honest truth. Crash was helping getting the garbage bags moved out, a couple, 3 at a time each night, because we had a lot of garbage bags and nowhere to put them, so we kind of had to go around the neighborhood, see who might have run into a dumpster lately, and go, okay, that type of thing. You know, maybe if we knew they had changed the bags out at the park that morning, might go in and give them an extra bag in one of the trash bins. You know, got creative. And so, yeah, there was this one day where actually me, Fawn, and Crash decided to kind of have a celebration party because we were really at that point. This is like a month and a half in. And Norman and I had gotten to know each other really, really well by this point, too. Just kind of backtrack all on y'all again real fast. By this point, Norman and I had become pretty fast friends. He was showing up at the house more like every 3 days instead of once a week now. And when he'd show up, we would actually sit downstairs in the kitchen and play chess and, you know, just kind of learn about each other. He had gotten a really nice chessboard as a retirement gift from the library, although he still went and like volunteered and did stuff there as well. But yeah, so he and I got to be kind of close, kind of like that foster grandpa type of thing. You know, it was kind of nice to have someone kind of close to normal. We had realized that Norman's got a little hoarder thing going on because all the paper books were his. Yeah, and I would not be surprised if through some frustration here and there, some of the other garbage that was in the house he had created too. Yeah, I mean, there were probably days where he was just angry as hell and didn't know what to do and had his own little ism of hoarding books for knowledge. So, but yeah, you know, all in all around, he was a good guy. Had his isms and ticks, but who doesn't, especially by that age. But yeah, so we had decided to have a party. My girlfriend at the time, yes, I actually had a girlfriend in a house with no electricity and no running water. Her name was Callie. She was a cute little punk rock girl with Raggedy Ann pink hair back then and very well built. Looked really good in all the little punk rock skirts and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so it was myself, Fawn, Crash, her, Shauna, and like 6 or 7 kids that I really didn't know, but were actually more indoor punk rock kids than outdoor punk rock kids. And we decided just how to have this little get together and drink 40s. Back there it was the Green Rainier Ale or Ice, whatever the hell it was at that time. That was the 40 of choice, and smoke a lot of weed, cigarettes. Like I said, there's like 7, 8 of us hanging out upstairs, and hear the front door blow open because I still haven't figured out how to. Hello. Take that moment to clear my throat. I still hadn't figured out how to get the front door locked. I hadn't found the key for that, and there had been some damage to the front of the door too when somebody had kicked it in somewhere along the way. So at the time I was actually using a couple of solid 2x4s to just kind of wedge against the door and keep it closed. And up until then, including any kind of windy San Francisco moment, the doors had stayed closed, but we heard this wham, you know, front door just slamming open. I was like, all right, I'll go down, I'll put the boards back in, see if I can figure something that might work better against whatever's going on. And I get about halfway down the stairs, and I am greeted. I ain't got 3 hands, so I can only do 2. But I had 3 guns in my face. What are you doing here? It's cops. Not these ones. I looked at them and said, I live here. What are you doing here? You could tell this was definitely not the answer they were expecting from a kid with a mohawk and looking the way I did at 20. Like, what do you mean you live here? I said, well, the actual owner of this house has given me and 2 other people that are here right now the okay to live here in exchange for cleaning the house up and making improvements on it. I said, we were actually taking a moment and enjoying ourselves. Had a couple of friends over. I said, what is this about? And these 3 officers and I actually end up talking for about 5-10 minutes Turns out that one of the friends of Shauna that had been invited over had decided to be very stupid punk rock and climb up the outside of the house to get into it, which I hadn't known. This caused the neighbors to call the police. Fair. So these three police and I are almost done talking. They're like, dude, this is actually kind of really nice. It's rare we get a call like this, and it actually turns out that somebody is doing something worthy rather than just destroying the house. And this was 2 male officers and 1 female officer. And I will say all white. Now, the officer that had been over next door talking to the neighbors that had called the police came in. Short little Asian guy. I honestly do not have a racist bone in my body unless you're stupid. I hate stupid. Just like I hate racists. Because racists and stupidity go hand in hand. But he had a hard on for me. I don't know because I was a young little punk rocker or what, but he refused to believe that we had the right to stay there. Like, you can't stay here. No, you are not staying there. I will not allow. I will take you down to the station before I will let you stay here. You people are not staying here. And the other cops were just like, I mean, they gotta back their bud whether they want to or not. I mean, all of them were kind of like, dude, what are you doing? It's okay for them to be here. But he wasn't gonna have it. So I finally just said, you know what, dude, it's fine. I was getting hungry anyway, so we can go down to the pizza joint, like the Wagon Wheel or something like that. I said, we can have food. And then I said, I can come back, talk to Norman, so I ain't worried about it. And the little Asian officer was like, yeah, you better have a note that you can live here from here on out if I ever come back. Like, all right, I can make that happen. But so I get everybody, we clear out and we go down to the Wagon Wheel and have pizza, and Callie was all worried that he might show back up to that night and try and bust us for being in there at nighttime. So when it got down to just myself, Fawn, and Crash, she was just like, all of you are coming back to my place. Because she was living with her parents still. She was 19. And we went back to her place. So she had her own little, like, almost separate apartment off the side of their house at that point, with like a pool that we got to go hang out in and a jacuzzi, which, yes, I didn't mind seeing Callie in a bikini going into the jacuzzi. I won't mind. It was kind of a good moment. Thought I heard something behind me. No, beside me. But yeah, so we crashed there that night. And then the next day I went back and actually saw Norman the day after that and told him what had happened. So I was like, write me a note. So he wrote me a note, and I just continued on going on like I was. Got more of the skeleton locks fixed and got the front door so it would actually close. And decided that it was time to start doing things like knocking the old paint off the front of the porch and overhead and such, because it was just so old. A lot of it, as you would walk up, if it got shifted, it would just start to fall on your head, and not gonna hurt, but kind of suck. It's like, oh, nasty. So I was just kind of getting all that kind of stuff cleaned up, and here comes cop car. And immediately I went, it's him. And sure enough, he pulls over right away, and he comes stomping up to the stairs, and I'm pulling the note out of my wallet. He tries to grab it from me. I'm like, nope, you can read it, but you can't have it. And he's like, well, this is not okay. You are not going to be able to stay here. No, you're just not going to be able to stay here. I'm going to have a fire inspector here now because he'll condemn this place in a heartbeat. I know there's earthquake damage. You have no right. No, you cannot stay here. I will have the fire inspector here tomorrow, mister. You're not staying. Okay, bring it on. Let's see what happens. Couple 3 weeks go by. Couple 3 weeks. And we're reaching the point of where Norman knows that there's really not a lot I can do at this point. I mean, just being a kid who's got the basic skills of like sanding and painting and tinkering with locks and hefting stuff and cleaning it, and that's it. But I need a little bit, because this police officer had said that when I did see Norman the next day, I told him that I had to do something about his room because of the fire inspector, and he was like, okay, fine. I said, dude, we gotta do something about your books. He's like, my books? I was like, Norman, you need to start going through them and at least putting the doubles to the side, and I will sell the doubles. Like, Norman, he had 5 copies of Neuromancer alone. He had an ish, and anytime he'd go to a store that had books in any way, he was going to buy 2 or 3 of them. It didn't matter if he already had them. He had an ish. But he gave me the okay to go ahead and clean it and to start getting his books figured out. And one of the things we had to do was actually just get his books out of the front room. So they moved to the closets upstairs. And Norman and I had already made this arrangement that basically anything I found in the house, and that included money, he said was ours. Like, yeah, if you find any money, it's fine. I don't care. I'm all fine. I mean, guy was set. He had nothing to worry about, more or less. So we went to move the red couch so that he had been sleeping on. That was his bed. That dunky couch. That was his bed. He didn't want anything else either. He's like, no, when I'm here, that's what I want to sleep on. Couch has been in here since I was a kid. I'd like it to still be in here. But we had to move it. And when we moved it, a veritable flood of change just hit the floor. Bam! Just change. So we actually start going through the couch, and more change falls out, and we're pulling bills out of it left and right, here and there, and just $125 in loose change of the goddamn couch. Now this I did set to the side and let him know was there. He's like, take it. You found it. Go ahead. I don't care. You guys need to eat. Use it to eat. But yeah, so he really did kind of, well, yeah, okay, so, we were reaching a point after that, especially once we got his room done. There was really nothing left to do other than trying to find little things to do. And Norman and I had started to have a talk at this point that he would like to look at selling the house within a couple of months. He's like, I don't want to sell it too soon because you guys have been cool, and it's actually kind of nice to have people in the house for a moment. He's like, I can't do it for forever, but if you want to hang out for a couple, 3 more months, and then kind of maybe help me figure out how to sell this thing, I'd be okay with that. You guys don't really have to do anything. You just hang out. He was actually kind of a really cool guy in his own weird little ways. So yeah, I mean, really, we were just kind of hanging out. And me and Fawn were upstairs smoking a bowl. And I see this shit brown sedan pull up and park right across from the house. I'm like, oh, that's the fire inspector. Ain't nobody else gonna drive that color of a sedan. And sure enough, this pudgy white guy with the big mustache and a Jufro comes walking out of the car. And as he's about to come up to the door, I will go ahead and open it. I'm like, oh, you're the fire inspector, aren't you? Boy. Yes, I am. All right. Let's go ahead and get this going. And so I told him everything that had been going on up to that point, everything we had done, what it had looked like when we first got there, what it looked like now. And I did say, we've got a lot of garbage bags still in the basement that we're trying to figure out how to get rid of, because it was not easy to get rid of all of those garbage bags. There were a lot. He's like, well, probably shouldn't show me the basement then, huh? Let's go look upstairs. This is some of that weird, stupid, amazing luck I have in life. Things could have very easily not gone that way. I could have gotten the very next fire inspector who was like, oh, screw you, I'm with this cop, get the hell out. Instead, I got this guy who looked at us as, if anything, you've reduced the fire hazard of this house by getting all of that out of here, not having it strewed all over the house, and having people actually in here knowledgeable of what's going on. But, cops. Not all of them, just some of them. But those ones, cops. But yeah, so the fire inspector and I, we finish up our inspection. His only demands were to get a couple of smoke alarms, since we didn't have any yet. And he wanted to see safety candles, which meant that these were candles that could float in a bowl of water. And he said, officially, you can't live here. But since you're a working crew, if you work into the night and you just have to happen to stay here, so it's just that much easier starting the next day. He's like, I guess it happens from time to time, huh? So, dodged that guy again, and I honestly never saw the Asian officer again. In fact, I really didn't ever see a cop up around the house ever again. Around this time, Callie and I had kind of gone our separate ways. I think for a girl that cute and that rich, homeless little wild punk rock boy was just an itch and not much more in the long run, which I was fine with. Right around that time, Crash and I were in the front room, because once we had it all cleaned up and looking good, Norman was actually okay with us hanging out in the front room during the day and enjoying the bay windows. So Crash and I were sitting on the bay windows, drinking champagne, which is something else I need to bring up. There was a little store at the end of the hill that let us run credit. So if it was a day or two before I hauled books or what have you down to the guy at the bookstore, or sold off a couple of the pieces of some of the older furniture we found here and there too, because that happened too. Those folks would let us run a tab for a couple of days and then pay it off once we got the money from the book guy. So Crash and I are sitting there drinking champagne, eating potato chips. High class in our eyes. Well, this cute little brunette goes walking by, and I will admit, Crash was the one that called out to her first. He's like, hey, what are you doing? She turned around, it's like, nothing. Like, you want to come drink some champagne? Like, yeah, sure. Her name was Jessie. She would end up being my girlfriend for the next 2 months. I had not intended that to happen. It just kind of happened. Crash was a little butthurt, but Fawn was willing to hang out with him, so he felt a little better. And this is actually right around the time Fawn is going to disappear. And she and Crash were kind of off and on item. Well, we were all three hanging out. Like, every week or so, Fawn would get the itch and be like, hey, Crash, come here. Okay, now go away. I had learned that Fawn had left home because her stepfather did that thing stepfathers aren't supposed to do. I won't leave it at that. But she didn't want to be a runaway. She didn't want to live this life. She just hadn't been able to figure out any other option. her grandparents lived in San Francisco. She was actually from San Francisco. She hadn't run far. She just ran away. And Wolverine was the first person who she ran into who kept her safe. Wolverine traveled on once he realized I was going to stay with the house, because he's like, dude, I'm not a cleaner either. He's like, I'm glad you've done this. I'm glad she's safe, but I'm going back to New York. So that's what happened to Wolverine. He went back to New York. So through these like couple of months that had already happened, Fawn and I also got closer, kind of like brother sister. And we got to talking about her grandparents, and she wasn't sure if her grandparents would believe her or not. But she called them, and she got to talking to them. And it took a couple weeks till Fawn was comfortable to leave, but she did. She lived with her grandparents, and since I never saw her on the streets or back of that house for the next 2.5 months, I'm gonna guess things went okay. Because she knew she had a place anytime, as long as we were still there. So, Jessie and I started dating. Jessie was kind of a rich girl too. Her parents were definitely rich. They had a very nice house up above where we lived. And life was pretty easy. I mean, it wasn't too bad there for a couple of weeks. It was pretty darn good. And then came the point of where I went and actually stayed at Jessie's for almost 3 days. And Fawn was gone too. It was nice to go over to Jessie's and take a shower and hang out with a cute girl in a house that had working water and electricity and food and everything else. But when I got back to the house, turns out Crash had let the wrong people know what kind of living situation he was having. I came back to Bill, the skinhead, and his buddy Ogre, now at the house. Bill was not a nice guy. Ogre was worse. And they had no intentions of leaving. Crash was afraid of them. And I knew that even if I took a swing, I was going to end up mash meat. So we had a situation. Next time Norman came back, which was like 2 days later, he and I went for a walk. I let him know what had happened, and I said, I'm really sorry. This isn't a good thing. I said, I think it's time to really move forward on selling the house. And this was like 2.5, 3 weeks after Fawn had gone, so. He's like, are you sure you could hang out for another month? I said, not anymore. I said, dude, with the people that are starting to learn about your house again and the people that are in your house right now, no, now we have to sell. So, started that process. Took a couple, 3 days of going into realtors' places. I was going to like 2 or 3 a day, and each time they just kind of looked at me. I mean, you got to realize it was 20-year-old who was trying to say, hey, I've got this really nice house that has no running electricity or water for sale, but, you know, don't worry, I'm a total little wild punk rocker guy. None of them really took me seriously until about the 3rd day. I found somebody that was willing to actually walk down and look at the house. And so they did. They looked at the house, and they were like, yeah, we want this. You know, even with the lack of running water, even with the lack of electricity, even with the vines growing in through the back wall. We want this house. So I took their number, saw Norman a couple more days later, gave him the information. Phone calls happened back and forth for a moment, and about 2 weeks later, Norman came to me and said, hey, the sale is happening. It's going to be done in about 3 days. I want to give you $900 and hope that helps you get to wherever you need to be. So he did. A random number. I don't know what 900 was to him, but it was a lot to me. Honestly, I stayed in town for a couple of more days hanging out with Jessie and blew a couple $100 with her, just kind of having a good time and a tearful goodbye because she really didn't want me to leave. For a 21-year-old, because she was actually a year older than me, she thought she was really in love with me. Maybe she was. I don't know. I can be charming from time to time. But I knew that I, unfortunately, was not ready to be in love with somebody at that time because I had so many demons to chase down yet that I knew I would not have been comfortable trying to stay in San Francisco. Whether I liked it or not, it was time to go back to Portland and deal with a few things. So I did. And that's kind of the story in San Francisco. Trust me, there's a lot of other stories in there that I haven't pulled out. 'Cause, I mean, my God, it's condensed, under 3-hour version all told officially. And I'm sure there's plenty of things that will come up over time as I'm talking, but that was basically my year 20. Portland's definitely a story too. But I don't know how soon I want to get to that. Mostly because, tomorrow, cross all fingers, toes, and any other digits you can switch around. Because I take the van in tomorrow to have the ignition switch changed out, which the speedometer specialist really thinks is what we should address before even trying to find a new gauge cluster. So he actually believes that might just fix everything. And that would be awesome. Because then very soon after that, I will be showing you the beaches of Oregon very, very quickly. So anyhow, that's it. I've talked, I've rambled, I've dried my mouth. I'm almost tired of my own voice finally. Almost. So I will say goodnight. If there's questions ever about any of this, feel free to ask. I'll answer anything. But yeah, Norman's house was a magical little place. It's too bad the very end of it had a racist tinge to it, but we got through it. And I really didn't stay at the house much once that happened, in all sincerity. I kind of knew Norman's schedule, so I would just kind of show up when I knew he would be there, and then I was hanging with Jessie the rest of the time. So yeah, it was interesting. I had 2 girlfriends in San Francisco. Even being a homeless guy. I guess I wasn't really homeless at Norman's. It was just an interesting situation. But yeah, that's it. I'm going to stop this. I'm going to process this. I'm going to put it on Facebook. And you're going to get to see what a video at night looks like. I hope the quality's decent. Thanks for listening.